October 24th, 1942. Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands. The air hangs thick with the metallic tang of rain-soaked earth and the faint, acrid whisper of gunpowder from distant skirmishes. You're there in the dim, pre-dawn haze, crouched low in a muddy foxhole along the perimeter of Henderson Field, the vital airstrip that's become the bloody prize in this Pacific hellhole. The jungle presses in like a living thing, dense tangles of kunai grass and banyan trees dripping with moisture, alive with the incessant drone of insects and the occasional screech of a nightbird. But tonight, the real predator isn't the wildlife. It's the Imperial Japanese Army, massing in the shadows beyond the wire. Sergeant John Basilone, a tough-as-nails Marine from Raritan, New Jersey, wipes the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, his fingers calloused from years of handling heavy iron. At 25, he's already a veteran of the Corps, his stocky frame clad in faded utilities stained with the red clay of the island. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scan the tree line through the slits of his helmet. Around him, his machine gun section from the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines huddles in their positions. Private First Class Nash, young and jittery, feeding a belt of 30 caliber rounds into the Browning M1917 water-cooled machine gun. Corporal Lewis, steady as a rock, checking the tripod mount. And a handful of others, their faces smeared with camouflage grease, whispering prayers or cracking grim jokes to cut the tension. The Marines have been holding this line for weeks now, ever since they stormed ashore in August to seize the island from the Japanese. Guadalcanal is a fever dream of a battlefield, malaria-ridden swamps, relentless tropical downpours that turn the ground into sucking quagmires, and an enemy that fights with fanatical zeal. Henderson Field is the key. Control it, and you control the skies over the Solomons. Lose it, and the whole campaign crumbles. Basilone knows this all too well. He's seen buddies cut down by sniper fire or shredded by artillery, their screams echoing through the nights. But tonight feels different. Intelligence reports whisper of a major Japanese push. Elements of the 2nd Division, including the hardened 3rd Battalion of the 29th Infantry Regiment, reinforced and spoiling for a fight. They're out there, thousands strong, creeping through the underbrush with bayonets fixed and orders to overrun the airfield at all costs. As the first hints of false dawn streak the sky, a low rumble builds like distant thunder. It's not weather, it's the murmur of boots on wet leaves, the clink of equipment, and the guttural commands in Japanese filtering through the foliage. Basilone tenses, his hand gripping the pistol grip of his machine gun. "Steady, boys," he mutters, his voice a gravelly anchor in the chaos. "They come at us, we give 'em hell." The section's guns are positioned in a shallow trench, interlocking fields of fire covering the approaches. Ammo crates are stacked nearby, belts of gleaming brass cartridges ready to feed the hungry maws of the Brownings. The air grows heavier, charged with anticipation, as if the island itself is holding its breath. Suddenly, the night erupts. A flare arcs high overhead, bathing the jungle in eerie white light, and the Japanese charge begins. Waves of soldiers burst from the tree line, their cries of "Banzai" piercing the air like a war horn. Rifle fire cracks from both sides, tracers zipping through the darkness like angry fireflies. Mortar rounds whistle in, exploding in geysers of mud and shrapnel that tear into the Marine positions. Basilone's gun roars to life, the heavy thump-thump-thump of the 30 caliber rounds cutting swaths through the advancing horde. You can almost feel the recoil vibrating through your bones, the heat from the barrel singeing the air as spent casings clatter to the ground. Men fall on both sides, Japanese soldiers crumpling in heaps, their Arisaka rifles still clutched in death grips, while Marines scream in agony from wounds that bloom red on their fatigues. Basilone shouts orders over the din, directing fire, keeping his team focused. "Keep it steady, pour it on." But the enemy keeps coming, undeterred, their numbers seeming endless. The 3rd Battalion is no ragtag force. These are disciplined troops, veterans of China and the Philippines, pushing forward with suicidal determination. As the first wave crashes against the wire entanglements tangling in the barbs, Basilone's mind races. His section is holding, but the pressure is building. One gun jams from overheating, its barrel glowing cherry red in the muzzle flashes. Nash fumbles to clear it, his hands shaking, while Lewis lays down suppressive fire from the adjacent position. The battle rages on into the early hours, the jungle transforming into a maelstrom of smoke, fire, and blood. Basilone, sweat pouring down his face, feels the weight of the moment. This isn't just a skirmish, it's the tipping point. If they break here, the airfield falls, and with it, the Marines' foothold in the Pacific. But Basilone isn't one to yield. Drawing on his boxing background, back home they called him Manila John for his pre-war stint in the Philippines, he fights with the precision of a prizefighter, conserving ammo, picking targets. Yet as the hours tick by, his section begins to thin. A grenade lands too close, shredding 2 men into silence. Another Marine slumps over his gun, a bullet through his helmet. The line wavers, but Basilone stands firm, manning the gun himself now, his world narrowing to the sights, the trigger, and the endless tide of enemies. The night wears on, relentless, and you can sense the desperation creeping in. Ammo dwindles, the guns run hot, and the Japanese press harder, sensing weakness. Basilone knows he has to hold, no matter the cost. Little does he know this is just the beginning of his legendary stand, a lone gunner against a battalion's fury. As the cacophony of battle swells, the Japanese assault hammers the Marine perimeter like a tidal wave crashing against a crumbling seawall. You can almost taste the cordite in the air, thick and bitter, mixing with the coppery scent of blood that soaks the churned-up earth. Sergeant John Basilone pivots between his guns, his boots slipping in the mud as he unleashes burst after burst from the Browning. The weapon's rhythmic chatter is a lifeline, mowing down clusters of enemy soldiers who scramble over their fallen comrades, their Type 99 rifles barking back in defiance. But the toll is mounting. Private Nash, the kid from Ohio who'd been joking about home-cooked meals just hours ago, catches a round in the chest. His body jerks once, then slumps lifeless over the ammo belt he'd been feeding. Corporal Lewis yells something incoherent, grabbing for his own weapon, but a hail of bullets from a Japanese Nambu light machine gun stitches across his position, silencing him forever. The section is unraveling fast. Basilone glances left and right. Only a few Marines remain, their faces pale masks of exhaustion and fear amid the flashing chaos. "Hold the line!" he bellows, his voice cutting through the roar like a sergeant's whip. But words alone won't stem the tide. With his primary gun overheating, its water jacket hissing steam into the humid night, Basilone dashes to a neighboring emplacement, dodging zipping tracers that whine past his ears. He slides into the trench, shoving aside the body of a fallen gunner, and takes control of the second Browning. His hands, blistered and raw, work the bolt, clearing a jam caused by mud-caked rounds. Under the sporadic glow of exploding shells, he pries open the feed tray, fingers flying despite the enemy fire snapping overhead. A Japanese soldier breaches the wire just yards away, bayonet gleaming. Basilone snaps off a quick shot from his Colt .45 pistol, dropping the man in a heap, then resumes firing the machine gun. The enemy is everywhere now.
The 3rd Battalion of the 29th Infantry pushing with relentless fury, their officers urging them forward with katana swords raised high. These aren't green recruits. They're battle-hardened troops, fueled by Bushido code and the Emperor's mandate to reclaim Guadalcanal. They charge in human waves, some crawling through the grass on bellies slick with rain, others sprinting upright in suicidal banzai attacks. Basilone's world shrinks to the glowing barrel of his gun, the endless clutter of brass casings piling at his feet, and the shadowy figures falling in his sights. But ammo is becoming a crisis. The crates are running low, spent belts littering the position like discarded snakeskins. Need more belts. He shouts to no one in particular, realizing his team is gone, decimated, scattered, or dead. In a move born of pure desperation, Basilone abandons his post for a heartbeat, sprinting through the no man's land toward a supply dump some 50 yards back. The jungle floor is a minefield of craters and bodies, and enemy fire rakes the ground around him. You feel the adrenaline surge as he weaves. Low and fast, a Japanese grenade exploding nearby, showering him with dirt and fragments that sting his arms. He reaches the dump, grabs armfuls of heavy ammo, cans, each loaded with 250 round belts. of .30-06 cartridges and hauls them back, muscles straining under the weight. Bullets ping off the cans as he runs, one grazing his sleeve, drawing a thin line of blood. Back at his gun, he slams a fresh belt into place, the Browning roaring back to life just as another wave crests the wire. Hours blur into a feverish eternity. The Japanese keep coming, undaunted by the mounting piles of their dead. Basilone switches guns again when one seizes up, its mechanism fouled by the relentless firing. He repairs it on the fly, dismantling the feed pole with a multitool from his belt, clearing the obstruction while lying prone, exposed to sniper fire. A round creases his helmet, jolting his head, but he shakes it off, blood trickling from a superficial scalp wound. As dawn's grey light filters through the canopy, the attacks intensify. The enemy senses the weakening defense. They're close enough now that Basilone can see their faces, grim, determined, some no older than boys, others scarred veterans with eyes full of hate when the machine. Guns finally sputter dry, ammo exhausted. Basilone doesn't falter. He grabs a discarded M1 Garand rifle from a fallen Marine, its 8-round clip pinging empty after. A few well-aimed shots that drop. Advancing soldiers. Then it's his pistol again, the .45 bucking in his hand as he picks off infiltrators who slip through the breaches. But the fight turns primal. A group of Japanese breach the trench, bayonets fixed, charging straight at him. Basilone draws his machete, a heavy, razor-sharp blade issued for hacking through jungle vines but now a weapon of last resort. He meets them in hand-to-hand combat, swinging with ferocious power, his boxing skills turning the blade into an extension of his fists. One soldier lunges. Basilone parries, countering with a slash that fells him. Another grapples close. Basilone drives the butt of his pistol into the man's face, then finishes with the machete. Blood spatters his uniform, mixing with sweat and grime, as he fights like a cornered animal, holding the position alone. Through it all, the airfield looms behind him, its runways dotted with Cactus Air Force, planes that could turn the tide if they survive the night. Basilone's stand is buying precious time, each minute a victory against the battalion's onslaught. Bodies pile up. Estimates later put his kills between 38 and 100. Though in the heat of battle, numbers mean nothing. The Japanese falter, their waves breaking against this unbreakable rock of a man. But exhaustion creeps in. His arms ache, vision blurs from smoke and fatigue. Still, he fights on, a solitary guardian in the inferno. As the first rays of sun pierce the horizon, the first tentative fingers of sunlight claw through the smoke-shrouded canopy, casting long shadows over the carnage that litters the perimeter of Henderson Field. You stand there in the haze, the acrid stench of gunpowder and charred flesh clinging to your nostrils, as the battlefield reveals its grim toll in the growing light. Bodies lie twisted in the wire entanglements, Japanese soldiers in their khaki uniforms, some still clutching grenades or rifles, their advance halted mere feet from the Marine trenches. The ground is a churned morass of mud and blood, pockmarked by craters from mortar fire, and the air hums with the groans of the wounded, a haunting counterpoint to the fading echoes of gunfire Sergeant John Basilone, his uniform torn and soaked in a grisly mosaic of his own blood and that of his enemies, leans heavily against the cooling barrel of his last functioning machine gun. His chest heaves with ragged breaths, every muscle screaming from the night's ordeal. But his eyes, fierce unblinking, still, scan the tree line for any sign of renewed assault. The Browning before him is silent now, its ammo belts exhausted, the metal warped from hours of continuous fire. Scattered around him are the remnants of his desperate defense, empty casings glinting like fallen stars, discarded weapons, and the still forms of his comrades, their sacrifices etched into the earth. Basilone's hands, blistered and trembling, clutch a blooded machete, ready for whatever comes next. His alone, utterly, the sole survivor of his section, having held off what felt like the entire Imperial Japanese army, through sheer will and unyielding ferocity. But the enemy isn't done. From the jungle's edge, a final push emerges, a ragged remnant of the 3rd Battalion, 29th Infantry Regiment, perhaps a company strong, driven by officers who refuse to accept defeat. They charge again, their banzai Cries weaker now, laced with desperation rather than triumph. Basilone, spotting them through the dawn mist, scrambles to action. He grabs a nearby Thompson submachine gun from a fallen Marine, its drum magazine, half full, and unleashes a staccato burst that cuts down the lead attackers. The .45 ACP rounds thump into flesh, dropping men like puppets with severed strings. When the Thompson clicks empty, he switches to grenades, pulling pins with his teeth and hurling them into the advancing line. Explosions bloom in quick succession, shredding the formation and filling the air with shrapnel and screams. You can feel the shift now, the momentum teetering. The Japanese falter, their numbers depleted by Basilone's relentless stand. What was once a battalion-sized assault, hundreds of men pouring from the trees, has been whittled down to scattered groups, their cohesion shattered. Estimates will later vary, but Basilone's kill count alone is staggering. Some say 38 confirmed. Others whisper of up to 100. Bodies piled in grim testimony to his marksmanship and resolve. The airfield behind him remains secure, its runways intact. The Marine pilots already stirring in their tents, unaware of how close they came to annihilation. Reinforcements finally arrive, fresh Marines from adjacent units, drawn by the ceaseless din of battle, rushing forward with rifles at the ready. They pour fire into the retreating Japanese, driving them back into the jungle's embrace. As the enemy withdraws, melting into the undergrowth like ghosts, Basilone collapses against a sandbag, his body finally giving in to the exhaustion. A corpsman kneels beside him, bandaging wounds that seem minor compared to the hell he's endured. A grazed arm, a scalp laceration, bruises from close-quarters brawls. "You held him, Sarge," the medic mutters, or in his voice, "The whole damn battalion." Basilone manages a weary grin, his teeth flashing white against the grime. "Just doing my job," he rasps, though everyone knows it's more than that. Word spreads quickly through the lines. Manila John, the boxer turned Marine, single-handedly repelled waves of attackers. Manning guns, fetching ammo under fire, fighting hand-to-hand when all else failed. His actions prevented a breakthrough that could have overrun Henderson Field, dooming the American campaign on Guadalcanal. In the days that follow, as the battle for Henderson Field rages onto its conclusion, Basilone's heroism becomes legend among the Marines. The Japanese offensive, part of a larger effort by Lieutenant General Harukichi Hyakutake's 17th Army, ultimately fails, with heavy casualties on both sides. But Basilone's stand on that fateful night of October 24-25 stands out, a beacon of defiance that bolsters morale across the island. He doesn't seek the spotlight. Instead, he returns to his duties, training new replacements and preparing for the next fight. The legacy of Guadalcanal endures, a turning point in the Pacific theater that halted Japanese expansion and shifted momentum to the Allies. Basilone's story, immortalized in books, films like the Pacific miniseries, and even a Navy destroyer named in his honor, inspires generations. It's a reminder that in war's crucible, ordinary men perform extraordinary feats, holding lines not just with bullets, but with unbreakable spirit. Page, who survived the war and lived to 88, often spoke of those nights, crediting divine intervention and Marine training. Together, their stands exemplify the few good men ethos, proving that one machine gunner, against a battalion's might, can indeed change history. As you step back from the battlefield's edge, the jungle's chorus resumes, waves crashing on distant shores, wind rustling palm fronds, a peaceful veneer over scars that time can't fully heal. Guadalcanal's ghosts whisper of valor, urging us to remember, in the face of overwhelming odds, heroes like Basilone and Page didn't just survive. They prevailed.